What happens when a group of paranormal investigators start a conversation? You get Ghost of the Coast Paranormal, the podcast. Tales of the dead, the bizarre, and all things supernatural. Join us now as we dive in to the legend of the Gray Man. Hi, and welcome back to Ghost of the Coast Paranormal, the podcast. I'm Erin.
I'm Lydia. I'm Deborah. I'm Christine.
And today we are joined by a very special friend of ours and awesome team member, Christine. So, today, first off, how are you guys doing today?
Trying to stay cool.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
hot.
We're all really happy to be inside.
Very, very hot today. Today we are talking about probably one of South Carolina's most notable legends, the legend of the Gray Man.
Super fascinating.
Very fascinating. So, before today, have you guys ever heard, I know Chris has, but have you guys ever heard of the Gray Man?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, I grew up hearing about him, being from here.
Yeah.
And I've not grown up here, and I've heard stories, and then the weatherman had posted an image, I think, during Ian.
Oh, yeah. It's a very fascinating concept, and we have Chris on today to tell us all about the Gray Man. But I do have a couple questions for you before we get started on the Gray Man. So, what got you interested in the paranormal?
Because to me, the paranormal was always normal.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. I mean, since I was a little girl, I always had experiences. I was raised in an old farmhouse outside Philadelphia, and there's already a lot of history in that area.
For sure.
And so I would go outside, out back, and I would see things moving around and floating around. And as I got older, I got to hear people speaking to me that weren't there, hear voices, and to me it was just normal. And then it wasn't until I got a little bit older, into my preteens, that people were starting to tell me, you shouldn't be talking about that kind of stuff out in company like that, And so I was like, okay, so it's not normal.
Mom's the word.
Yeah, so I had to kind of hide out and find people that were also into it
Right,
in my
yeah.
teens, and then started, experimenting with certain things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are one of our original members of the team, and so far on our investigations, a two-parter for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's been your favorite investigation, and then of all of the tools that we have now, all of the arsenal of equipment that we have, or experiments that we've done, what's your favorite method during paranormal investigating?
I'll do, which are my favorite toys that we use, are the equipment. Used to be, I was more into using the rods in order to communicate, because I've been doing that since I was a little kid, so it was something I was very used to. Now it's more my phone. Now I'm using my camera, my video, and just videotaping more, because I'm starting to actually see more things I'm seeing in the corner of my eyes. Now I'm actually being able to, have up there and post also on YouTube. Favorite location? That's tough, because we've had some good ones.
We
So
have.
you can give more than one. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everything from, one of the freakiest was that morgue.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was one I was probably the most anxious to
Yeah.
think about. Was when
There was a lot of energy there.
Yeah, I think that made me more anxious than the other locations. Believe me.
I did not like the upstairs in that place.
Right.
And that one was weird for me, and I can't remember. Was it me, you, and Candy were in a group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you Christy,
And Craig.
and Craig were in a group. And that was a weird one because we were getting a lot of activity.
And they weren't.
And
Yeah,
we
we're-
weren't, but I was in Estes picking up some really good
Yeah.
information, and we found some information upstairs when we came across the old book, and there was info that we were finding in there, so it was odd, the power, the energy wise, it was just very strange.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird one. And I didn't like to go upstairs. And when
No,
we
I
went
know.
upstairs,
Yeah.
I saw something something was walking up on me.
Was that before or after? Okay, that goose.
That was after. That was
Yeah.
that was like
Mhm.
that was at like 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I felt something basically just like bum rush me from behind. And I about knocked Candy and Deborah downstairs to get out of the way. But yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. So, Gray Man.
Mhm.
What can you tell us about the Gray Man? I know the tale itself is over 200 years old.
Mhm.
It's still going strong to this day.
Yeah, it is. First, let me clarify something. There are other books out there called The Gray Man, and that's a whole different genre. That's a thriller book about a CIA operative, something like that. We're not talking about those Gray Man books, okay? I had written a book about the legend of the Gray Man, and he's specifically the one I'm talking about, is the one down who appears in Pawleys Island.
Which is a historical book,
It's,
not.
right. So where we are currently at my home, I'm in Murrels Inlet. Just south of here is Pawleys Island. Now, Gray Man, our Gray Man story, and there's a North Carolina Gray Man story too. But that story didn't come up till about 1900.
Okay.
Our Gray Man story, the very first sighting was actually 1822.
Wow.
But there's at least 4 different renditions of the story. At least 4 different stories that
Okay.
go into it. So, like the first story I think I ever heard was a young lady and a young man in Pawleys want to get married. He leaves town, raises money, for their wedding day. And she hears that he died overseas. So she marries somebody else instead. And on her wedding day, here comes her original fiance. He's not dead after all. And he shows up at the wedding. And he is so distraught that she's marrying another. He leaves, ends up disappearing. Great storm hits. So they think it's him. He comes back. And then there's another rendition that goes on about Great Man. And that one is that she and he are going to get married. Nice young couple on Pawleys Island. He goes overseas. When he comes back, his ship wrecks on a reef out in Pawleys Island. She is walking the beach. She sees a young man. She approaches him. It's her fiance. He is injured and dies in her arms. And so that's another rendition of, the Gray Man. And it just keeps going and going and going.
Right.
So there's just a lot of different people say Gray Man will come before the hurricane. Some people have told me, well, sometimes they've seen him during a hurricane. He doesn't come during the hurricane from what I hear from people who have actually seen him. He always comes before a hurricane.
Now, have you actually met a lot of people who have said that they've actually seen him?
I have met 2 or 3 people.
Okay.
One has seen, and 2 had an aunt who saw a Gray Man right before Hurricane Hazel. That was 54. And the funny thing is her rendition of the story says he was dressed differently than the rendition that I know of. So her rendition is that Gray Man came and knocked on the door to her and her husband's place, and they were right down here near Pawleys Island. But he was dressed in like gray, like reindeer almost, where he had a wider hat and he had a very long coat, and it was all gray, and he warned them of the storm. And the husband turns to the wife and says, this young man's trying to warn us to leave, and when he turns back, he's gone. So that's another rendition. So there's so many different kinds. They say he wears that kind of outfit. Some people say that he's a monk, a Spanish monk,
Interesting.
and that he wears a monk's robe that's all in dark gray. And I've had people tell me that they've seen a man that looks like he has a robe on. And he's been seen out in Pawleys Island area. I've only known one person that ever said that they saw him in just the robe. And that one is a new one on me. I'm not familiar with the robe.
Yeah,
Was there a Spanish monastery in or around?
Yes,
Pawleys?
there was. Yeah. Through this area in the 1520s, 1521 through 1526, the Spanish. I'm going to discuss that in a minute.
I'm gonna actually walk over for those.
Yes.
I can post this
I'm
on
going to
but also
explain
on
that
the
one.
context.
Yes. So in the 1520s, yes, the Spanish did come to our shores.
Okay.
And when they came here, they tried to establish a fort. Now, they're not exactly sure exactly where the Spanish established the fort. Some say Garden City, some say Murrells, some say Pawleys, some say Litchfield, some say as far down as Winyah Bay. No one has an exact location, but the Spanish were in this area. And with them, they brought war. They actually went to war with a lot of the Native Americans that were here. They brought slavery. They enslaved a lot of them while they were here too. And then they brought disease. And it was actually disease that killed off the majority of the American natives that were here. Right. So they also believe, of course, the Spanish brought, a monk with them or a priest, a Spanish priest with them. And they say that maybe the Spanish priest was here, maybe a hurricane had hit while he was living here, maybe he died in the hurricane, and maybe he shows up. That is one legend I'm not really clear on. I know one person who might have seen him in a robe.
Could you imagine though how different? Like they're not gonna get. Could you imagine? Everybody take a drink. But could you imagine how different like our coastline would look if they did build that fort? Like how different
If they
it would
stayed,
be. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. We would be actually a part of what would have been like in Florida when they
Yeah.
settled in Florida, Spanish, Mexico, Texas, all that. They would have all the way up to California. They would have had all the land
Right.
all the way across.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been crazy.
yeah. It would have been
That'd be
completely
absolutely
different. But they didn't like it here. Everybody says they moved to Florida. Everybody moves to Florida.
I'm not moving to Florida.
Not
No,
now.
not me.
Not now. Everybody's moving to South Carolina.
There. Yeah.
So, and the reason we're talking about the gray man today is because here in South Carolina, it is the middle of hurricane season.
Yes, it is.
So,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, it's
So far, so good.
so far so good.
Right.
Nobody's seen the gray man yet. But is it true that the gray man was last spotted right before Hurricane Florence?
Okay, y'all. I have people send me pictures
We can dispute stuff. It's
all the
totally fine.
time. I
This
have
picture's supposed to be
I have
like
people
40.
send me pictures. That's the one for Ian. Can I discuss the one about Ian that she had just put up first? Okay, y'all. The gray man does not wear shorts.
Ah!
Yeah, but or is that the end of a coat?
No, let me explain. I investigated that picture. That picture went up everywhere. It went viral. Okay.
We'll share it.
And that particular picture, I looked up the people who actually posted the picture, and it was a young lady in Charleston. And her family was walking the beach. That's her cousin. His nickname is the Gray Man, according to the family. So she posted, oh look, it's Gray Man walking the
Thinking
beach.
she was being funny.
Right.
Ah.
And so everyone went, oh wow, she actually saw the Gray Man. No, it's her cousin called Gray Man. And not to mention, so the family thought, ha ha ha, this is funny. And they started saying, look at all these people. They actually believe that's the Gray Man. We're making fun of everybody who actually was posting that picture.
Yeah.
Well, bless their hearts.
So there were one or two people who posted it who have a big name in the area. And I wrote to them, I said, that ain't Gray Man, y'all. Take a closer look because he's got shorts on. And I know who the family is because I did my due diligence. You know, I will debunk. I believe in a lot of stuff, but I will debunk a lot of stuff. And I
Yeah.
debunked that one. That's not Gray Man.
Well, and that's the cool thing about the paranormal field is we do get the opportunity to
Yeah,
try our hardest to debunk stuff
Yeah.
before we say, yeah, this is fact.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
we might come across
Yeah.
stuff.
Now you had mentioned Florence.
Yeah.
I had someone send me a video, and it was very well done. And this is the funny thing: I get videos, and people show me the end of a pier, right? And they'll say, "Oh, this is the pier in Pawleys," and they show a figure, and he looks very ghostly and gray. He goes all the way across the pier in the middle of the hurricane.
Sea
So, number one, what are these people doing out in the middle of a hurricane, sitting there filming something and looking down a pier?
Well, that's the norm now.
Okay, right? And two, right, everything's very calm. Car ain't moving, they're not moving, right? It's very, boy, it's steady. And Gray Man, there goes Gray Man walking by. Gray Man does not appear during the hurricane because his job is to warn us before it comes.
Right.
So why would he be walking out there in the middle of a hurricane? I think the Gray Man's a little bit smarter than that too.
Yeah.
You know, but he's supposed to warn us. So we're supposed to see him days beforehand or the day before. But, you know, I said, no, that's not Gray Man.
So do you know families who actually credit the Gray Man for protecting them if
Yes.
they left? Okay.
Yes. There's two people, they're good friends of mine. They've asked me not to say their name, and I won't, don't worry. But yes, they had family that was on the beach, and that was pre-Hazel, and that was his aunt. And they had been in the house, and she had experienced Gray Man. Her story was actually written about in a book by another storyteller. This is years ago. But I just talked to them not too long ago, and they retold the story to me and another gentleman. I'm helping with a documentary about Gray Man.
Oh, okay.
There's a gentleman with Georgetown County Library who contacted me over a year ago, and I gave him all the information that I could about Gray Man, and he's still working on the documentary right now. So we don't know when it's going to be out. But that was one of the stories that I relayed, was that how that family had actually seen
Right.
Gray Man at the door, and then he disappears.
Wow.
But that was some time ago. The most recent true story that I know of is actually right before Hugo, and that was 1989 when Hurricane Hugo hit, and that was Mr. and Mrs. Moore, and that's the story that's the most well known. Is Mr. and Mrs. Moore? They had a beach house down in Pawleys, and I don't know them personally, but I met the nephew who verified the story to me. They were staying at the beach house in Pawleys, and Mr. and Mrs. Moore were walking the beach in this broad daylight, and they saw the Gray Man, and he approached them and just pointed and said, "A hurricane's coming, you must leave," and he just disappears. So they go back to the house and they grab everybody and everything, and they all go inland, and it was about 2 days later when Hugo hit. And the devastation was terrible. I mean, Hazel, they say, was probably the worst hurricane that we had had here. But they said Hurricane Hugo was Hazel's little brother,
Yeah.
basically, because he was just as bad. And it was almost a week before anyone was allowed back to Pawleys Island after Hugo. And when the Moors went back, they saw every home to the left and to the right, and all the homes behind them were completely wiped away. I mean, nothing left except for their house. It was still standing. So they still had their home, their property, everything was good. And the legend was that the beach towel that they left out to dry on the back railing was still there. So I always told that as, you know, ha ha ha, kind of a part of the story. About 6 years ago, the Moore's nephew had done my tour. And he, at the end of the story, turned to me and he goes, "That was my aunt and uncle." He goes, "That was my beach towel." And I said, "Really?" And yes, his last name was Moore. They had, you know, signed up for my tour under the name Moore. And he said, "Yes, that was my aunt and uncle." He was a little boy at the time. His aunt and uncle came back to the beach house and grabbed him and everything, and went inland as fast as they could, and he said, yeah, the tower was still there when they got back. And you can still see the picture of the house still standing. They got pictures after Hugo and Hugo, they still have a picture of the house and everything else is wiped away. And the story is on a TV show called Unsolved Mysteries, because the Moores were interviewed for the show, and you could still see the picture of the house. And I mean, it's just like pristine, like nothing happened to it, everything is just wiped away.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing. He's supposed to come before the hurricane and warn you.
Right.
People ask me, well, if you see him, that means you're safe, right? And I'm like, go, leave.
That's your warning.
That's your warning to
Heed
leave.
that
Don't
warning.
think that because you saw him, you're going to be safe here. That doesn't mean that. It still means to get out of here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be sticking around.
So, this area is an area that you see a lot of generations, right? Like people stay here for years and years. Have you ever had somebody claim to be a blood relative of the gray man?
No, not a blood relative. No,
That'd be
I haven't heard. I've done a lot of research for my book, and we don't know who Gray Man is.
Right.
We have no clue who he is. But when I was doing some research, I found a story that was written by Washington Alston. Washington Alston's probably the most famous artist of the South during the time period from Revolutionary War to Civil War and after. Even today, he's still very famous. Washington Alston had mentioned in his memoirs that his mother, Rachel Moore, was another Moore. Another Moore, was told that she could not marry her love, and that he left town, and that he came upon a tragic end himself before he could get back and marry her. So I thought that, wow, that's a pretty interesting story. That kind of sounds like the beginning of a Gray Man story.
Right.
So I took, in my book, Rachel Moore and her background, and I looked up, they had the young man's last name in the memoirs, and the last name was Neuville. And the Neuville family actually came up from Charleston. And a lot of pieces started to kind of come together with Rachel, because according to Gray Man's story, he appears only on Pawleys Island Beach.
Right.
Which means he has to have family or loved ones out there to constantly be coming back to Pawleys Island Beach. And Rachel Moore did marry a man named Austin, and they did have a home out on Pawleys Island on the beach. Because that's another thing I had to look up. Who would have a home out there where Gray Man would appear to warn the family, and the Austins were one of them. And Rachel Moore had married into the Austin family. So I believe that the young man that she wanted to marry was one of the Neuvilles. Now there were like 4 brothers, so that was hard to try to peg which brother I thought it was, and I came up with the one who was born the same year as Rachel. And his name was William Neuville. So whether that is Gray Man,
Interesting.
I'm not saying 100%.
Maybe we'll have to go out to Pawleys Island on the beach one day with some of our equipment and ask some questions.
Yeah, we could. Or the next hurricane that comes up, we need to go out there and see if we can capture the Gray Man out on the beach.
Yeah, but if he comes up and tells us to leave,
Well, then we
Yeah, then we're gonna go.
then we're gonna get
Well,
out.
let's say, well,
I would.
can you pose for a picture first? You know, and
Can
then
we
we'll-
take a quick
We're
picture?
running away. Take the picture behind us.
My mom always taught me to respect my elders, and if he looks at me and says leave, I'm leaving. Y'all can stay, y'all can come,
Mhm.
whatever.
However you want to handle it.
Don't let Deborah drive. She'll leave us.
I'm sure you better beat me to the car.
Alright. Well, just know if you ever see me running, I don't run, so. you
I don't
better-
either. That's
better
what I'm
run.
saying. You better beat
Better
me to the
run.
car.
Yeah. So you had mentioned he is specific to Pawleys Island, though.
Right.
But there have been some cases of spotting other warning spirits
Mhm.
up and down the coast.
Right.
So it's almost kind of like they might have passed in the same manner, and now they're like, hey, go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have so many hurricanes coming onto our coast, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to die from hurricane, mostly from drowning. you know, so there's a lot of people we have lost over the years due to drowning in the hurricanes, so I would
Natural,
be
they're gonna
surprised.
wanna warn their family members, so.
Right.
Exactly, because some people say they might be blown up in Myrtle Beach. That could be just a private family member that actually saw someone that passed, you know, due to a storm or a drowning or something like that, you know, who might be just coming by to warn that family. North Carolina has a story about Great Manitou, which is very similar to our story, but ours started in 1822, and their story started around, I think, 1900 in North Carolina. And that's the other thing about every story I've heard. Every single story says the Gray Man, his first appearance is in 1822.
Yeah.
Each and every one of them. So there's got to be something to the validity of it must come from some historical fact, because every story I've read says 1822. And Will Newville, from my book, actually dies right before the next hurricane of 1822. So he passed. So that's one of the reasons I also picked him for the
Right.
book, because in real life he actually dies
Right.
before the hurricane of 1822.
So, in
So
your
it just kind of
research,
falls into place.
Yeah.
do you know where he is buried?
No, cannot find his grave. I have looked everywhere.
Not even a marker?
I have found other family members, and they are buried in Charleston, where the family actually came up from.
Right.
But I have not found Williams, and I've looked everywhere.
Interesting.
Yes, I mean, I even followed him when he was in the war. He actually, you know, fought revolution. He was during that time period with the Revolutionary War.
Right.
So I managed to find him listed that way. But after that, it's like he disappears. I cannot find a gravestone anywhere for him. I found his brothers, I found his father, mother, and brothers. I could not find Will anywhere.
What about Rachel?
Oh yeah, Rachel. She's from the area, so yeah.
So
Rachel
safe to
wanted
say
her
he's
family.
not buried anywhere with her?
No.
Interesting.
No, she's buried with her second husband, which was Dr. Henry Flagg. So she actually married again after Billy Austin dies, then she actually marries one of the Flaggs.
I was gonna say, it sounds like a lot of families in Pawleys Island are all connected.
In one
And
way or another.
What's funny is when I was doing the research, Rachel Moore is actually Alice Flagg's grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was wondering when she said
Wow.
that.
It was
Husband.
very interesting because she married a Flagg, Rachel Moore. Her first husband dies. He's in Austin. She marries Henry Flagg, Dr. Henry Flagg. And they have children, and she has a son named Ebenezer, and Ebenezer is Alice Flagg's dad.
So now
So she
people
has a
listening are not going to know
husband.
why we're fascinated with Alice Flagg either.
Do what? I'm sorry.
People listening aren't from this area.
All right.
So they
I know, we're
Alice
kind of getting
Flagg
off
is-
track a little
So,
bit, but.
like, we're kind of like,
Squirrel,
oh,
it's
really,
okay.
Alice Flagg? But they
Squirrel.
don't know what we're talking about.
That'll be another exercise.
Yes,
That's another one.
Stay tuned.
That's another South Carolina
We will
story.
explain.
Yep. So
But it's intriguing because this lady has a husband that may possibly be a ghost, the Gray Man.
Mhm.
And then she has a grandchild,
Mhm.
Alice
Stay
Flagg,
tuned.
is a
A
ghost.
ghost.
that, and they're both very well
Here.
known
Mhm.
here in this area.
So are there any other families that are tied into this little interesting tidbit?
Everybody's tied in around here.
Well, I mean, like
Yeah.
ghost-wise, like Gray Man and Alice.
Not
That
that,
family
not
circle.
ghost-wise, not that I'm aware of, because I haven't interviewed some of the people yet that I'm interested in. There's some people that own some of the very historic homes around here that have had the homes for a long time, and I haven't had a chance to interview them to see if they have any connection or anything like
Well, I'm gonna
that.
put
So.
something out there. What if Rachel was one of what we like to call our little beacons, and that's why her surrounding family was so easily able
To find her.
to come back?
Could be.
It's very possible.
I mean, and typically we've found just through investigating that, you know, we all have sensitivities sensitivities in one way or another, everybody on the team. But we found when we are all together, we tend to get spirit lining up out the door to communicate with us. So, when you said beacon, it's for those listening, we refer to it as like the lighthouse effect. We're just drawing people in. And there have been times where it's been like it was that turnstile, just constantly
Yeah.
people lining up to talk with us, and that's a very interesting theory.
Yes.
My mind's been blown.
Squirreling.
Oh man. So yeah. So let's move on just a little bit. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and where people can find it?
The book can be found, of course, locally, little stores around the area here. For instance, like Lazy Gator, Seaside Market. There's a few other places here in the area, but you can get this online. There's like a dozen different little, book outlets online. Everything from Apple to Tomatoes to Barnes and Noble. There's Amazon. I prefer, if you go on Amazon, it's usually like second-hand book, and they will up the price on there a little bit. So I prefer people either buy local. If you're from here, if you come to our area, you can buy local. Some of the places will actually, send the book to you. They will mail it out to you. But like if you go to Barnes and Noble, Apple, Tomatoes, there's quite a few of them that will sell it on.
I bought mine locally so I can have it autographed.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and what we'll do is we can put some of the local shops here in the description.
Can they order it online from like Lazy Gator?
Lazy Gator will mail it to them. That's the one store I know that will.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have the link we'll have the information for Lazy Gator and a couple of the other shops here locally in our description.
Yeah.
And then
And the Tobacco Museum also.
and the
has it
Tobacco
too.
Museum, which we will be going back there.
Yeah.
We will have already gone to the Tobacco Museum when you guys are watching this or listening to this. And I'm so excited.
I am too. I didn't get to go to the
Oh,
last
that's
one, so
right,
I
yes.
am just beside myself.
On a side note, on a squirrel episode, I told y'all, but I don't know if I can't remember if I told you, but I feel like Homeboy is still gonna be pissed off that we're
Oh, I think so too.
and I don't think he's gonna like. Well, you said it, he's not gonna like Craig.
Oh no, that's the other thing is that we got Craig along.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to kind of change it up
Yeah.
a little bit, I think. Yeah, he's going to be like our trigger, I think, when we're there.
Damn Yankee.
Well, I haven't been kicked out of there yet, so.
Oh goodness, but and then you also do a tour here locally.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I've been doing this tour for 8 years now. It's called Miss Chris's Inlet Walking Tour. It's a walking tour that goes down the Murrels Inlet Marsh Walk here in Murrels Inlet. And for 8 years now, I tell stories and legends and about the history as well. My Facebook page is Inlet Cottage and Walking Tour. If anybody wants to reach out and see about a tour, the tours run from April until November. And they are Wednesdays through Saturdays. And I'll tell you, October is my busiest month. So if you want to do a tour, if you're in town, try to do it, as soon as possible, because October gets to be really busy around here.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've done it multiple times.
Yes, you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
I was amazed and impressed, and you are what my daddy always called a true soul troubadour.
Oh,
And you can
that's nice.
tell it in the way that you relay these stories. I have a very active imagination, naturally, but it's so easy when you are relaying these stories. Today, my mind, the first night I went on your tour, my mind went to that era.
Oh, good.
And
Good.
as you're laying out this house here and this happened here, I can see it. And for me, that makes it emotional.
Yeah.
Makes it very emotional. And I was so blown away with it. I was enamored and soaking up every word
Thank
of what
you.
you were saying. It was phenomenal.
That's why I do this. we're losing all our legends. We're losing the history.
Yes.
You know, we've got a lot going on here, a lot of building and new homes, new people coming to the area, and they don't know the history, they don't know the legends. And we've had storytellers here in Murrels Inlet for many, many years, and they have all passed away. And I thought the best thing to do is to pick up where they left off and continue telling the stories, because we can't lose this, you know. And this is a big reason why I think spirit reaches out to us. They don't want to be forgotten.
Right.
They don't want to be forgotten, you know, and that's why every once in a while you might get poked, you might get scratched, something like that.
Goose.
They're like, hey, I'm here, or goose, you know. But that's why I think they do that, because they're like, don't forget us, we're still here, you know, and so that's why I carry on the tradition today, you know, just being a storyteller. And I get emotional about it too. When I talk about certain things out there, I can feel the emotion. I get very emotional when I'm out there.
We can see it in you.
Yeah, I really do. It's almost like I have past life here. It's like I was supposed to come here and do this. It's just very strange. I've never been to this area before. And, or have I? Exactly.
Rachel.
You know? Yeah. And so something just drew me here. And so, and this just happened. I just said, I love the stories, I love the legends, and I just drink it all up like a sponge, you know, and I just have to let everybody know about it.
Well, I for one appreciate it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Thank you so
Definitely.
much.
So much.
Thank you.
No, it's like I'm trying so hard not to ask her about other stories from the tour because I know we're gonna come back to it sometime.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, don't ask, don't ask.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Do
we're
it, 'cause
going
we would be here
through-
all day.
Yeah.
Picking out topics, and we're like,
Mhm.
you know, we could talk about this. We could talk.
I
No,
know.
that will be a Chris episode. Let her do that.
No, I think when we did the Ouija board episode, we had mentioned the old hag. I'm like, wait, Chris might want to talk about
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched it. I went, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's yeah, I agree. I love your storytelling, and you know, and we've taken, you know, in our mission statement, it's we do what we do to gain knowledge, answer questions, educate, and tell stories of the past.
Yeah.
And you know, being in this field, it's awesome to be able to do that. And so, but yeah, I think. Now, what would you guys do if you actually saw, like actually saw the gray man, or actually like you were at the beach. I know you said you would leave. I know you said you would run, but would you seriously try and get a picture of him?
Yes.
Or would you just take off?
I would get a
Would you
picture
try
of
and ask them
If
questions?
it's possible.
I would. I absolutely would.
I
think
really
I would try to get a picture.
Yeah.
But it all depends on his reaction to me. You know, if he looks at me off the bat and says, you need to leave, I'm not hanging around to ask questions.
All
I'm
in the
gonna
manner of his voice.
I really do think we should try to do it as a mini investigation if we have
Totally.
any upcoming, you know, something they think is worth.
Mhm.
Now, let me ask you this: Does he come out daytime, nighttime, or anytime? I know spirit will typically, it doesn't matter what time of day it is.
I've heard both.
I would think it probably
I've
looks like
heard
a
both.
lighthouse. Once they know the storm is coming in, it doesn't matter. As soon as they
Yeah.
know
They're like,
that
okay,
they're
we
being
gotta-
warned, it's
we gotta walk the
now.
beach.
It's not. Let's
Right.
wait until morning and see who's awake.
The story
Right.
before Hazel in '54, that one, he appeared at night. And then with the Moors, before Hugo, that was during the day. So I guess he's just trying to give people ample warning,
Yeah.
you know. So if the storm is going to hit at night, he'd probably show up during the day.
I mean, especially because his time period is it's
Mhm.
not, you know, the warning systems we have now. So I would think it's as soon as he would know that there's
Mhm,
strong
mhm.
warning.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and let me ask you this too: Can multiple people, like, say we went out on the beach today, but we went maybe different times or staggered our staggered our times, whatever. Would multiple people in one time be able to see him, or is it kind of like the first one to find me wins and is safe?
That's a good question. When it came to Mr. and Mrs. Moore, they both saw him at the same time. I don't know that anybody else, though, that was around them on the beach had seen them.
So it's probably an interesting question to ask. Once he appears, is there an amount of time he stays? Is he there, he does a little walk, or
Says what he has to
I
say.
know it's
and
coming, I'm gonna just go back and forth up and down the coast until I know somebody's heard me.
then- Yeah.
Yeah, it could be exactly that. It could be that as he's wandering, not everybody is open.
Right.
So he's probably wandering and nobody's paying attention, nobody's seeing him, and then when finally someone does, he gives their warning and then he can rest.
Right.
Because at least he gave the warning to someone.
He's
Right.
expected them to relate.
Exactly, so I think maybe that's what he's
So if
trying
anybody
to
sees
do.
the green man, don't keep it a secret. Tell everybody.
Tell everybody.
Let us know.
Please.
So, and then lastly, does he come for major hurricanes or for all hurricanes?
Major. And I'm saying that only because some people have said they saw him before Florence. Now Florence was considered major. Then someone said Ian. Ian wasn't a major. It was a Cat 1. Although it did some damage around here. I gotta admit, we were all very surprised on the coast here how much damage we all sustained from the Cat 1. But we're thinking it's just the major Cat 2, 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes that will come around here. But someone had said right before Ian that they had seen him, but I've not seen any photographs, any
But
video.
they might have been referring to that thing that went around. on
That's the
internet.
only thing. That's the only one. And everybody just kind of zoomed in on that, and that was it. So, you know, no one else has shown me anything. No one sent me anything. If you all saw the gray man, send me something,
Let us
because
know.
I want to see this. I want to see if there's any proof out there, because I've seen a few videos and a few photographs, and I just shake my head and go, mm-mm. You
Yeah,
know,
if y'all-
I'm waiting for that one,
Right.
good one, you know.
Yeah, if y'all, seriously, if y'all have seen the gray man or have an experience with the gray man, send us a message and we will relay it to Chris. Or you can send it to her on her Facebook, but
Well,
We-
and,
we
and
wanna
also,
know.
I think if you are in any coastal area and you have something similar, just write back to us and let us know
Yeah,
that, so we
let
can
us
kind of
know.
see
Yeah.
what else there
Right.
is.
taking a survey. Yeah, it's just that's just one of the most interesting tales for me, and I think it's a true South Carolina staple. I think
Mhm.
you can't go to the beach without hearing about
Right.
it.
No.
Right, and we take it seriously, actually.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do. When a hurricane, we hear a hurricane's coming, first thing a lot of people are doing, going out to the beach to see if they can find Gray Man, if he's actually gonna come and warn it. So,
I
we'll see.
I hear a hurricane's coming and I'll go, I wonder if anybody's seen the gray man.
Yeah.
And I'll start.
I'm online
Yeah.
looking.
I'll start looking. But
I know me and Craig, we were like, last time with Ian, Craig was here, and Craig was like, you wanna go to the beach with me really quickly? And I was like, I can't get to the beach right now. You know? But yeah, he'll go right out there.
what we can
Yeah.
do is we can wait until there is some tropical activity out there, and then we'll take a trip down to the beach.
And if it starts getting really bad, I mean, we can take some of those moving straps that has the linkage thing on it, and we can tie or strap you and Craig to the pillars.
I didn't mean going out there during the storm.
When it's he's worn to sleep before
Yeah,
that.
we would go like when we
Well,
start
we would
seeing-
go before, but I mean, you know,
and then just leave
for
the beach.
research purposes, we would need to leave y'all there.
Like duct
With a
tape a
camera,
spirit
duct
box.
tape.
Yeah. Put a GoPro on your forehead.
There you go.
Put some
Yeah.
Gorilla Tape or duct tape
Yeah.
and just cut a little circle out for the camera.
Hey, you
Yeah.
know, that's some good
Live
ones on your
action.
head.
Yeah, I've got to shave my head first.
I got a buzz right now.
Alright. Things I do for the
I know,
camera.
right?
Well, oh goodness. Well, y'all got anything else to add?
I don't know, is there anything else, like, interesting that you found that you wanna?
The only thing is, I still am still gonna be doing research
Oh,
for years and years, because
Yeah.
I'm still not 100% that it's Will Newcomb, although a lot of different pieces came together like a puzzle, and
Right.
it could have been timeline. He died right before the hurricane of 1822. You know, he was in love with Rachel, and they wanted to get married, but the family said no, and a lot of different things. But I'm still going to be doing research for a long
Right.
time, I think, trying to figure it out.
And that's the second investigation we're saying, let's go out on the beach and try to talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
let's see if we can get any answers
Awesome.
from him. Yeah, maybe he'll come through, maybe he can tell us. I I
Get
hope
enough of
so.
us out there, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for
Yeah,
coming
thank
to
you.
my
We
little
really appreciate it.
abode.
Yeah.
Here.
It's beautiful
My
out
active
here.
abode.
Yes. Yeah, we absolutely appreciate it, and we hope to have you on again later on in the, not in the summer, not during hurricane season
Or tourist season.
or tourist season, yeah. But yeah, well, there you have it, the legend of the Gray Man. And make sure you check Chris out again on Facebook.
On Inlet Cottage and Walking Tour.
And we'll share everything.
We'll share
Yeah,
her
thank you.
page. Check out one of her books. Check out her tour.
Check out all of her books. There's
All of
more.
her books.
Yeah.
All of the books.
Great read.
Yes.
Great read.
Thank you.
So, well, until next week, y'all come back now, you hear?